All right, before I put all the decking back on, I wanted to really quickly give an overview of the wiring. Just a disclaimer, I'm not at all an expert, but this is what I did. I bought this rocker switch here, and immediately I realized that if it's plugged directly into the battery, that I can't, that it's running all the time. So the lights will come on. They're not on right now. But I realized really quickly that if it's plugged directly into the battery and I don't want to constantly unplug it every time I'm not using the boat, because I don't have an ignition or anything on the boat, that I would need to get a switch. So that's what this little switch is here. The reason I did this is just a USB charger here and a voltmeter, which I don't really plan on using. And these other three switches, these two are for the front and back nav lights, and this one is for the bilge pump. So this boat doesn't sit in the water. It doesn't need a float switch or anything like that. It just needs to be here just in case, have a bilge on it, just in case I'm on the boat, take on a lot of water. I can flip this on and run it. So all that to say, this doesn't need to be running very often, unless I'm out at nighttime or again, I need to use the bilge pump. So I installed this little switch here for when I want to actually employ these switches. So I can just switch this on. It comes on. See the voltmeter there, reading 12.3 right now. And to run the bilge, I've got this here. So that's working. What I've done here, down here, you can see this little 5 amp inline fuse, it's called. I ran the fuse directly from the battery to the switch because I didn't want to put a fuse on every single switch. I didn't think I had to. Again, I'm no expert, so please consult someone who knows electric a lot better than I do. But I did that just in case there's any surge. I don't need very much power on this switch, so I'm just using that 5 amps, which is recommended for the bilge pump. The nav lights are usually less, so I do hope that's okay. But this runs directly into the main line of the switch, and then each switch kind of has its own terminals on the back of it. Again, I don't know a lot. This comes pre-wired, so there may be ways around what I've done, but I thought this would be the most suitable way to do that. The other two things, what I've done is I've connected this switch to these two terminals, this negative and positive. So that's what this line is here, and this line is here, running to the switch, powers the switch, and then from there, I've got nav lights running forward here. Underneath here, you can see those. I have not installed the lights yet, but I wanted to have that in there before I put the decking in. And then these run all the way back to the back here. These are both nav light and bilge pump. So that runs back to that nav light right there. And then down here is the bilge pump I've installed. This thing's quite cheap. I think I got it on Amazon for $20. It is rated for 800 gallons per hour. And then I just ran a hose up over the top there. So the other two things that I've done that I need power for are my power pole, which is in the back. I'll show you in a moment. And the cool thing about the power pole is it's got this large plug on the back of it here. So even though this is directly wired to the battery, which again, someone might, because I don't have an ignition, you might want to put a switch on it. But instead of doing that, what I can do when I'm not using this, instead of going again down into the battery, unhooking the power pole from the terminals, you see the light, it's flashing right now, it's on. I don't know if you can actually see that little light flashing. It's on, but all I have to do when I'm not using it is simply unplug this, put the cap on it, and just sort of leave this down here. But this obviously is wired in. This is a separate line wired underneath back up to the battery terminals. And so that is connected again, because that's 15 amps. That has its own fuse on it, which is right here. It's 15 amp fuse, recommended by PowerPole. And then you've got the two lines, the positive and the negative, running to these small terminals here. Now what I did is, instead of running, I don't know if this was necessary, but I didn't want three 3 connections on one terminal. So I went and purchased these things. They're quite cheap, just to add to the other output on the battery. So this is positive and negative here, and these run my trolling motor. So here's the trolling motor. It's just temporarily hooked up to show how this works. I did get an amp for the trolling motor, or sorry, a breaker for the trolling motor. This is a waterproof breaker for boats right here. It's a 50 amp. Minn Kota recommends that for a 12 volt, 55 pound thrust trolling motor, which is what mine is. So the cool thing about a breaker is, of course, you can hook up a fuse, a 50 amp fuse, but if that blows, you've got to keep replacing it. But just like a breaker in your house, if there's too much energy or surge running through, or the trolling motor's jammed up and it's getting hot, this will just break, just like a breaker does in your house, and then you flip it back on and you're ready to go without replacing it. I got this for about $25. These can range anywhere from $25 to, I've seen it for almost $100. So anyway, so that's all set up, and just show you really quickly, trolling motor, it's on speed continuous, and there it is running, different speeds. So that is the simple wiring that I've done.